Shattered promises, Julian Blackwood adjusted his platinum cufflinks as he surveyed the ballroom of the Blackwood Tower. Everything gleamed with perfection. Crystal chandeliers, marble floors, and the city skyline visible through floor-to-ceiling windows. The charity gala would be the social event of the year, cementing his status as New York's most influential real estate developer. At 42, Julian had everything: wealth, power, and a reputation that made rivals tremble. "Mr. Blackwood, the guest list as requested," his assistant Vanessa said, presenting a tablet. Julian scrolled through the names, pausing at one he'd specifically instructed to be included: Sophia Reeves. His jaw tightened. 5 years had passed since their relationship imploded, but the bitterness remained like acid in his veins. "Perfect," he murmured. "Make sure Ms. Reeves is seated at table 3, directly in my line of sight." Vanessa hesitated. "Sir, are you certain this is wise? The board members, did I ask for your opinion?" Julian's voice remained soft, but Vanessa immediately stepped back. "No, sir. I'll arrange it immediately." Julian turned back to the window, memories flooding his mind. Sophia had been different, brilliant, passionate, never intimidated by his wealth or status. For 18 months, he'd believed she might be the one to break through his carefully constructed walls, until he discovered what he believed was her true intention: access to his fortune and connections for her fledgling interior design business. "She played me perfectly," he muttered to himself. The evidence had seemed irrefutable: correspondence with a competitor discussing Julian's projects, her sudden interest in his real estate portfolios. When confronted, she'd denied everything, but her tears hadn't moved him. He'd ended things brutally, ensuring she was blacklisted from major design firms. Now, years later, Julian had heard through industry gossip that Sophia had somehow managed to establish herself despite his efforts. The thought irritated him like an unreachable itch. Tonight would remind her, and everyone else, of the consequences of betraying Julian Blackwood. His phone buzzed with a message from his business partner: "Theodore Harrington. Final acquisition papers for the Riverview project signed." "The neighborhood association has withdrawn their objections." Julian smiled coldly. Another victory. The rundown riverfront district would soon become luxury condominiums, regardless of the displaced families. Business was business after all. "Mr. Blackwood," his security chief approached, "there's been a situation with the protest groups. They're planning to demonstrate outside tonight." Julian waved dismissively. "Increase security. Remove anyone who comes within 50 feet of the entrance." As evening approached, Julian retreated to his penthouse to prepare. His stylist had selected a custom Armani tuxedo that emphasized his athletic build, maintained by daily 5 a.m. workouts despite his punishing schedule. Standing before the mirror, Julian rehearsed the smile he would offer Sophia: polite, condescending, with just enough familiarity to remind her of what she'd lost. He imagined her arriving alone, perhaps in a dress slightly too ambitious for her current station, eyes widening as she realized he'd invited her merely as a power play. "Time to remind everyone what happens when you cross me," he told his reflection. What Julian didn't know was that across town, Sophia Reeves was preparing for the evening with very different intentions. As she zipped up her understated black gown, she glanced at the invitation on her dresser. When it had arrived, she'd nearly thrown it away, recognizing Julian's manipulative tactics immediately. But then she'd thought of her daughters, of the truth Julian had never bothered to discover, and made her decision. Tonight wouldn't unfold as Julian Blackwood planned. After 5 years of silence, it was time for Julian to face the consequences of his own actions, and the family he never knew existed. The unveiling. The Blackwood Tower gleamed like a sword thrust into the Manhattan skyline. Limousines and luxury cars formed a procession leading to the red-carpeted entrance, where photographers captured the arrival of New York's elite. Security personnel with earpieces scrutinized every guest, while protesters behind barricades chanted about gentrification and corporate greed. Inside her car, Sophia adjusted Emma's sapphire blue dress while Nathaniel straightened Olivia's matching outfit. Both girls wore their dark hair in identical French braids, accentuating their delicate features. "Remember what Mommy told you?" Sophia said gently. "This is a grown-up party, so best behavior. Stay close to me or Uncle Nate. Is Daddy going to be there?" Emma asked, her gray eyes, so like Julian's, wide with curiosity. The question still had the power to pierce Sophia's heart. She'd never lied to her daughters about their father, explaining in age-appropriate terms that he lived in the city but didn't know about them yet. She'd shown them pictures so they would recognize him, preparing for the day when this confrontation would become inevitable. "Yes, sweetheart. Your father is hosting this party. Will he be happy to meet us?" Olivia asked, bouncing slightly in her booster seat. Nathaniel caught Sophia's eye over the twins' heads, his gaze offering silent support. "I don't know," Sophia answered honestly. "But I'm happy to have you, and that's what matters most." When their car reached the entrance, Nathaniel exited first, then helped Sophia and the twins out. She wore a midnight blue gown that emphasized her elegant figure without being provocative. Her only jewelry, a pair of simple pearl earrings that had belonged to her mother. "Ready?" Nathaniel whispered, offering his arm. Sophia took a deep breath and nodded. With a daughter holding each hand, she ascended the steps with Nathaniel beside her. Inside the ballroom, Julian was engaged in conversation with investors when he spotted her. Even from across the room, Sophia could see the moment his confident smile faltered. His eyes moved from her face to the two small figures at her sides, confusion flickering across his features. Conversations hushed as guests noticed the newcomers. Sophia recognized many faces: business associates who had once courted her designs, socialites who had smiled to her face while whispering behind her back after Julian discarded her. "Ms. Reeves," the event coordinator approached, clearly flustered. "Your seating arrangement is at table 3, but we weren't expecting additional guests." "My daughters will sit with me," Sophia replied calmly. "I'm sure Mr. Blackwood wouldn't want children standing throughout dinner." Julian was now moving through the crowd toward them, his expression unreadable. Vanessa trailed anxiously behind him. "Sophia," he said when he reached them, his voice clipped. "I wasn't aware you were bringing guests." "Julian," she replied with a composure that belied her racing heart. "Allow me to introduce Nathaniel Caldwell, my colleague. And these are Emma and Olivia." She paused meaningfully. "They're 4 years old." Julian's gaze dropped to the twins, who stared back at him with identical curious expressions. The resemblance was undeniable, from the distinctive Blackwood gray eyes to the determined set of their small chins. 4, he repeated, color draining from his face. Whispers rippled through the crowd. Theodore Harrington appeared at Julian's side, assessing the situation with shrewd eyes. "Perhaps we should continue this conversation privately," Theodore suggested, gesturing toward a side door. "I think we're fine right here," Sophia countered. "After all, Julian invited me specifically to be seen, didn't he?" A waiter passed with champagne. Nathaniel took 2 glasses, handing one to Sophia. "You knew," Julian said, his voice low and dangerous. "You knew and kept them from me? Are you our daddy?" Olivia asked suddenly, her clear voice carrying in the hushed room. Julian physically recoiled as if struck. For perhaps the first time in his adult life, the unflappable Julian Blackwood appeared completely at a loss. "Mr. Blackwood is your biological father," Sophia confirmed, addressing her daughters while keeping her eyes on Julian. "But remember what I told you, families are made of love and choices, not just biology." "You had no right," Julian hissed. "I had every right," Sophia returned evenly. "Your lawyers made it abundantly clear you wanted nothing to do with me or any alleged offspring." Theodore intervened again. "Julian, the Kyoto investors are waiting. Perhaps Ms. Reeves and the children would be more comfortable in your private lounge until dinner." "That won't be necessary," Nathaniel spoke up. "We came to attend the gala, not to be hidden away." Julian's eyes narrowed as he assessed the man standing protectively beside Sophia. "And you are?" "A friend," Nathaniel replied simply. The tension was broken by a small hand tugging at Julian's sleeve. Emma looked up at him solemnly. Your building is very tall. Do you live at the top like a king in a tower? Despite everything, Sophia felt her lips twitch at her daughter's guileless question. Julian looked down, momentarily disarmed by the child's direct gaze, so like his own. Yes, he finally answered. I live in the penthouse. Can we see it? Olivia chimed in excitedly. Girls, Sophia interjected gently. Not tonight. Mr. Blackwood has many guests to attend to. Julian's eyes never left the twins' faces. They're really mine? DNA would confirm it, but I think your eyes are doing that job right now, Sophia replied. Now shall we proceed to our table? I believe you wanted me seated where you could see me throughout the evening. As they moved toward their assigned seating, Julian's carefully orchestrated evening continued to unravel around him. The whispers had become a steady hum of speculation. His plan to humiliate Sophia had backfired spectacularly, transforming him from powerful host to blindsided absentee father in minutes. What Julian couldn't possibly know was that this revelation was only the beginning of the reckoning that awaited him. Hidden truths. Sophia Reeves tucked a strand of auburn hair behind her ear as she studied the blueprint spread across her desk. The renovation project for the community center would be her design firm's biggest accomplishment yet, if she could finalize the plans before next week's presentation. Mommy, look. 4-year-old Olivia bounded into Sophia's home office, holding a drawing of what appeared to be 3 stick figures in front of a house. Her identical twin, Emma, followed more cautiously, clutching her favorite stuffed elephant. That's beautiful, sweetie, Sophia said, momentarily setting aside her work to admire her daughter's creation. Is that our family? Olivia nodded enthusiastically. This is you, this is me, and this is Emma, and our house. Sophia's heart tightened. There was no father figure in the drawing, just as there was none in their daily lives. The twins had Julian's piercing gray eyes and determined chin, genetic echoes that sometimes caught Sophia off guard even now. Ms. Reeves, her assistant Rachel appeared in the doorway. Mr. Caldwell is here to go over the structural elements. Send him to the conference room. I'll be there in a minute. Sophia kissed each daughter's forehead. Go with Miss Patricia, girls. Mommy has a meeting. After the nanny shepherded the twins away, Sophia gathered her materials and walked to the modest conference room of Reeves' design studio. The firm she'd built from nothing occupied the renovated second floor of a Victorian building in Brooklyn, worlds away from the gleaming Manhattan, skyscrapers of Julian's empire. Nathaniel Caldwell stood as she entered, his kind eyes crinkling at the corners. At 38, the architect had a quiet confidence that came from genuine talent rather than arrogance. His rolled-up shirt sleeves revealed forearms covered in intricate geometric tattoos, a personal canvas that reflected his creative mind. The community center plans look excellent, he said, gesturing to the 3D renderings on his tablet. But I'm concerned about the east wall support if we remove these columns. For the next hour, they worked seamlessly together, finding solutions that balanced aesthetic vision with structural necessity. It was the kind of collaborative partnership Sophia had once dreamed of having with Julian before discovering how little he valued her professional opinions. You seem distracted today, Nathaniel observed as they wrapped up. Everything okay? Sophia hesitated, then reached into her bag and pulled out the embossed invitation. Julian Blackwood's charity gala. He sent this to me. Nathaniel's expression darkened. The twins' father? Why would he contact you after all this time? Not to reconcile, Sophia said bitterly. Julian doesn't know about Emma and Olivia. I discovered I was pregnant 2 weeks after he ended things, accused me of corporate espionage, and made sure no major firm would hire me. She still remembered the devastation, how Julian had refused to even look at the evidence that would have exonerated her, how her calls went unanswered, and how the female designer who had framed her later received a promotion within Julian's company. I tried to tell him about the pregnancy, Sophia continued. His lawyers responded with a cease and desist letter threatening to sue me for defamation if I attempted to extort money with false paternity claims. Nathaniel's jaw tightened. And now he's inviting you to his party? That's twisted even for him. It's a power play. He wants to show everyone how far I've fallen while he's risen. Sophia gave a small, determined smile. Except I haven't fallen. I've built something real here, my business, my reputation, and most importantly, my family. So you're not going? Sophia ran her finger along the edge of the invitation. Actually, I am. The twins should be acknowledged as Blackwoods. Not for the money. I've never touched the trust fund my parents left me, saving it for the girls' education, but for their identity. They deserve to know their heritage even if their father is... She trailed off. A heartless corporate raider? Nathaniel supplied. Something like that. Sophia's phone chimed with a reminder. I need to pick up the girls from their dance class. Nathaniel hesitated. I could accompany you to the gala, not as your designer colleague, but as your friend. For moral support, the offer touched her. Since meeting Nathaniel on a renovation project 3 years ago, he'd become her closest professional ally and, gradually, a trusted friend. He'd attended the twins' birthday parties, fixed their broken toys, and never once treated Sophia with the pity that others showed the abandoned single mother. I'd appreciate that more than you know, she said softly. Later that night, after tucking the twins into bed, Sophia sat at her vanity and studied her reflection. She was no longer the young, naive woman Julian had known. At 34, her features had matured, lines of determination etched around her eyes and mouth. She'd fought for everything she had now. She opened her jewelry box and removed a small velvet pouch. Inside was the diamond pendant Julian had given her on their 1-year anniversary, the only gift she hadn't returned after their breakup. She'd kept it not out of sentiment, but as a reminder never to be vulnerable again. Tomorrow night, when she walked into Julian Blackwood's gala with her daughters beside her, that pendant would remain in its pouch. She didn't need Julian's diamonds anymore. She had something far more precious, the truth. Rebuilt bridges. 6 months later, Sophia stood in the garden of Julian's Hamptons estate, watching Emma and Olivia chase butterflies across the manicured lawn. The summer sunshine caught the highlights in their dark hair as they giggled and darted between flowering bushes. They love it here, Julian observed, approaching with 2 glasses of lemonade. The city apartment doesn't exactly have butterfly gardens. Sophia accepted the drink with a small smile. They talk about Daddy's castle all week. I think you're creating impossible housing expectations for their future. The easy banter between them was relatively new, a fragile bridge built over months of cautious co-parenting. The custody arrangement they'd eventually agreed upon gave Julian weekends and Wednesday dinners, a schedule that had initially seemed impossible to integrate into his workaholic lifestyle. Yet somehow, the fearsome Julian Blackwood had adapted. Board meetings were rescheduled around ballet recitals. Conference calls took place after bedtime stories. The man who once measured success in billions now counted it in his daughter's smiles. The Riverview Community Center opens next month, Julian said, changing the subject. Your design is remarkable, Sophia. The project represented their first professional collaboration, Julian's development company partnering with Reeves Design Studio to transform the once controversial Riverview property into a mixed-use development that preserved affordable housing while adding community spaces. It works because you actually listen to the neighborhood residents, Sophia replied. The Julian I knew 5 years ago wouldn't have done that? He didn't deny it. The Julian you knew was obsessed with winning at all costs. I've had to redefine what winning means. Across the lawn, Nathaniel emerged from the pool house, toweling his hair dry after a swim. The twins immediately abandoned their butterfly chase to run toward him, demanding to be swung in circles, a favorite game. Julian watched the architect lift his daughters, his expression unreadable. He's good with them. He's been part of their lives since they were 1, Sophia said softly. That means something. The complicated dynamic between the 3 adults had evolved into an unexpected arrangement. Julian had initially viewed Nathaniel as competition, not just for Sophia's affection, but for his daughter's love. It had taken months for him to recognize that Nathaniel's presence in the twins' lives didn't diminish Julian's importance, but rather enriched their world. The Kyoto. Investors were impressed with his sustainable design concepts, Julian admitted. The joint venture could be lucrative for both our firms. Sophia gave him a knowing look. Is that your way of saying you're finally accepting him? Before Julian could answer, his phone rang with his mother's ringtone. She's still ecstatic about being a grandmother, he explained before answering. Eleanor Blackwood's transition from formidable family matriarch to doting grandmother had been swift and complete. After the initial shock of discovering she had granddaughters, she had embraced them wholeheartedly, showering them with affection rather than the material excess Julian had feared. Yes, Mother, we're still coming for dinner tomorrow, Julian confirmed. Yes, Sophia and Nathaniel too. He rolled his eyes at Sophia, who suppressed a laugh. Their family dinners had become a monthly tradition, awkward at first, now increasingly comfortable as they all adjusted to their unconventional family structure. Later, as twilight settled over the garden, Julian found himself alone with Sophia on the terrace. The girls were inside with Nathaniel, engaged in an elaborate bedtime ritual involving stuffed animals and storybooks. I never thought we'd be here, Sophia admitted, gazing at the stars emerging above them. There were days I hated you, Julian. I deserved it, he acknowledged. I was arrogant, stubborn, blind to what really mattered. And now? Julian considered the question. His life had been upended, his priorities forcibly rearranged. The ruthless businessman still existed, but now tempered by something new, a father's perspective, a sense of responsibility beyond quarterly profits. Now I understand there are consequences more significant than financial ones, he said finally, and second chances more valuable than any acquisition. Sophia studied him in the fading light. You've changed. Not entirely, Julian admitted with a hint of his old arrogance. I still get what I want eventually. It just turns out what I want has changed. The sound of childish laughter floated from the house, followed by Nathaniel's deeper chuckle. Julian and Sophia shared a look of parental complicity. We should rescue him before bedtime negotiations get out of hand, Sophia suggested, rising from her chair. Julian reached for her hand, stopping her. Thank you, he said simply. For our daughters. For allowing me into their lives despite everything, Sophia's expression softened. They deserve to know their father. The real one, not the cold businessman I thought you were, but the man who reads them stories in different voices and builds pillow forts in a custom suit. As they walked toward the house together, Julian reflected on the journey of the past 6 months. He hadn't won Sophia back. Their romantic relationship belonged to the past. But he'd gained something perhaps more valuable. A family formed not through obligation, but through choice, day by day, decision by decision. Inside, Emma and Olivia had corralled Nathaniel into one more story before bed. Julian joined them, settling on the opposite side of Olivia's bed. The girls nestled between the two men who, against all odds, had found a way to share fatherhood without rivalry. Sophia watched from the doorway as Julian took over the reading, his confident voice giving life to the story's characters. This wasn't the family she'd imagined years ago when she'd first fallen for the ambitious developer. It was messier, more complicated, built on forgiveness rather than perfection. But as Emma's sleepy eyes drifted closed and Olivia's small hand clutched Julian's much larger one, Sophia knew it was stronger for having been broken and rebuilt. Like a foundation tested by earthquake and reinforced to withstand whatever storms might come. In the end, Julian hadn't lost everything by letting go of his bitterness, and Sophia hadn't won by seeking revenge. Instead, they'd both discovered something neither had expected, that sometimes family isn't what you're born into or what you plan for. It's what you build together, one difficult choice at a time. Fractured foundations. 3 days after the gala, Julian stood in his penthouse office, staring at the DNA test results in his hand. The clinical language confirmed what he'd known from the moment he saw the twins. Emma and Olivia Reeves were unquestionably his daughters. His blood, his legacy. The realization left him hollow rather than triumphant. For years, he'd channeled his hurt over Sophia's perceived betrayal into ambition, building Blackwood Developments into a real estate empire. Now, the foundation of that narrative had crumbled. You've missed 2 board meetings and canceled the Singapore investors, Theodore said from the doorway. People are talking, Julian. Let them talk. Julian tossed the DNA results onto his desk. Did you know Harrington and Associates handled my response to Sophia 5 years ago? Your firm sent that cease and desist letter. Theodore's expression remained impassive. We acted on the information available at the time. You were convinced she had betrayed company secrets. And now I learn I have 4-year-old daughters I've never met. Julian ran a hand through his hair. What does that make me, Theo? Human, his friend replied simply. The question is, what are you going to do about it? Julian had been asking himself the same question since watching Sophia leave the gala, her daughter's hands in hers, that architect hovering protectively nearby. The image burned in his mind, the family that should have been his. His phone buzzed with a message from Vanessa. Ms. Jensen has arrived with the quarterly projections. Victoria Jensen. The thought of her made Julian's stomach turn. After the gala, he'd finally connected the dots. Victoria had been the one who planted false evidence of Sophia's corporate espionage years ago. The ambitious designer had methodically eliminated her competition, and Julian had been her unwitting accomplice. Cancel with Victoria, Julian told Vanessa when she appeared, and schedule a meeting with HR about her termination package. Theodore raised an eyebrow but said nothing. Later that afternoon, Julian's driver delivered him to a modest brownstone in Brooklyn. He paused on the sidewalk, studying the building that housed Reeves' design studio. Through the ground floor windows, he glimpsed a stylish reception area. Tasteful, elegant, unmistakably Sophia's aesthetic. The receptionist's eyes widened when he entered. Mr. Blackwood! Do you have an appointment? No, Julian admitted. Is Ms. Reeves available? She's with a client, but... It's all right, Delia. Sophia's voice came from the stairwell. She descended slowly, her professional attire a far cry from the evening gown, but no less striking. I'll speak with Mr. Blackwood in the conference room. The space she led him to was modest, but beautifully designed, with exposed brick walls and reclaimed wood furniture. Your lawyer contacted mine this morning, Sophia said without preamble. I won't fight a paternity test, but I will fight for full custody. I'm not here to take them from you, Julian replied, remaining standing when she didn't invite him to sit. I want to know them, Sophia. They're my daughters, too. Biology doesn't automatically grant you rights, Julian. You forfeited those when you refused to even hear me out 5 years ago. Her words stung because they contained truth. I was wrong, he admitted, the phrase foreign on his tongue. About you, about Victoria's accusations. I've fired her. Sophia gave a humorless laugh. That's supposed to make everything better? Do you know what I went through? Pregnant, blacklisted professionally, abandoned by the man I loved. The past tense of loved cut deeper than Julian expected. I can't change what happened, but I can try to make amends now. The twins are not a business transaction you can renegotiate when terms become unfavorable, Sophia said sharply. The conference room door opened, and Nathaniel entered with architectural plans. He stopped short upon seeing Julian. I can come back, he began. No need, Julian said coldly. We're finished here. Nathaniel looked to Sophia, who nodded slightly. Actually, Nate, can you check if the twins are back from their play date? Julian was just leaving. They're here? Julian's head snapped up. Can I see them? The vulnerability in his question seemed to surprise Sophia. After a moment, she nodded. Briefly. But this isn't how we'll handle visitation moving forward. We need structure, Julian. A legal agreement. When Nathaniel returned with Emma and Olivia, Julian was struck again by their beauty, these perfect little beings who carried his DNA but had been shaped by Sophia's love and guidance. Hello, he said awkwardly, unaccustomed to addressing children. Emma regarded him solemnly while Olivia waved enthusiastically. Hi, Daddy. Do you remember us from the party? The simple title, Daddy, hit Julian with unexpected force. Of course I do, he managed. I've been thinking about you both. Mommy says you build big buildings, Emma said. Julian nodded. I do. Would you like to see some of them sometime? Both girls looked to Sophia, who kept her expression neutral. We'll discuss it. The visit lasted only 15 minutes, but it altered something fundamental in Julian. As he left the brownstone, he realized that for all his wealth and power, He'd never created anything as important as those two little girls. Back in his penthouse that evening, Julian stared at the city he'd helped shape. Towers of glass and steel rose from the grid of streets, monuments to his vision and determination. Yet now they seemed hollow achievements compared to the family connection he'd discarded. His phone rang, Theodore with updates on the Riverview project. The development would displace dozens of families from affordable housing, replacing their homes with luxury condominiums. Delay the project? Julian decided suddenly. I want to revisit the plans, see if we can incorporate affordable housing units. Theodore's surprised silence spoke volumes. That will cut into profits significantly. Some things, Julian replied, thinking of twin girls with his eyes, are worth more than profit margins.